Good afternoon and welcome to DC Podcast. Today we have with us Mr. Balu Pulipaka, a political editor, and Mr. Vamsi, who's a bureau chief for AP and Telangana. And we are going to talk today about the hottest thing that is there in the Telugu state politics. We are going to talk about manifestos, why a manifesto is an important part of the electoral process of the process of choosing the representatives, and whether it's just rhetorical promise made to the electorate, or is it really a kind of a commitment that you make to your electorate, your voters, and you actually put it in writing. And these are the promises which, if not fulfilled, you can actually hold your representatives and the parties accountable for that. And how this whole concept of manifesto, how it has evolved over the years, and whether it has become more serious, something cast in stone, or in the good old days of your 80s, 70s, it was something more which had more sanctity, and now it is more of a rhetoric. How potent it is as a tool for democracy, why it is an important thing for a voter, and how it has evolved over the years.
See, a manifesto is generally understood as something that is a promise. People hold a manifesto of a political party as a promise, right? So when that happens, most people assume that there is some kind of sanctity to it, it's a promise, it's like a promissory note. But the fact is, it does not have any kind of a legal protection. I can't go to a party with a copy of their manifesto and say, you said this and you did not do this for us. And the interesting part is, if a manifesto is released before the date of elections are announced by the Election Commission, technically it doesn't come under the Election Commission's purview. Anything comes only after the dates are announced. What Election Commission can have a say about it, because it falls under the MCC, Model Code of Conduct. But the Supreme Court had said, since a manifesto is part of an electoral process, Election Commission can still look at it. The Supreme Court had also said that parties need to be careful about what they say in terms of freebies or in terms of the kind of promises they make. They need to be realistic, and any kind of a freebie or an inducement, the Supreme Court has held that it is dangerous for democracy as a whole.
Yeah, but if you look at the Supreme Court has made some efforts, but it ended up with suggesting to the political parties to be not to over-promise them, and particularly with the more and more political parties, they are focusing on these populist schemes. So today, every political party, if you take, they are competing with each other in making promises, which some of them can never be delivered. They know that, and even if they try to make an attempt and do at least part of it, it is draining the exchequer. If you take example of the Andhra Pradesh also, now there is a strong debate whether these schemes which these people are promising, and for the last over 5 years they have implemented also, is governance means, does it mean just implementing these schemes, or does it include other infrastructure or capital investments? Capital investment is nothing but on the infrastructure which will give you returns even for the next generations. So these schemes are very short-sighted. Today my immediate requirement is addressed, but what about the future kind of a thing? So even I think court also could not go beyond a point, saying that they made efforts, they called all the political parties to file affidavits and all that, but there was no order specific saying that no, you have to, otherwise you will be punished. That kind of orders were not there.
So sir, is it safe to assume that since courts cannot make it binding, voters usually get carried away by the rhetoric and they are not really holding their representatives accountable for what promises they made in manifesto? But the silver lining is that your opposition parties can actually take it up, weaponize it, and use it against you in their campaign, and therefore there is some semblance of, I'm going to fulfill these promises, or if I don't, my opponent is going to use them against. So is that going to kick in?
No, but unfortunately what is happening is the opposition is trying, all the 5 years the opposition parties will actually they will criticize them, saying that this man is trying to do very indiscriminate borrowing, very reckless borrowings, he has to, how he can run the economy. All the 4.5 years are just till the elections. Take the best example is again I am referring to the Andhra Pradesh. Right from 2019 day one the Jagan got elected, they started saying that you first of all you don't have fund to meet all this. Then naturally your own resources are not sufficient, so you go on borrowing. Then they criticize the Jagan government saying that you are indiscriminately borrowing. Okay, and now today just before elections he doubled almost the Telugu Desam, whatever the Jagan has promised and trying to implement with great difficulty. I think they require some 50,000 crores per annum to meet his promise, to fulfill his promises. Now, having criticized that, having saying that you don't have sufficient funds and you are borrowing, now Telugu Desam has promised almost double to what Jagan is delivering. For example, that Amma Odi, which is to fund one child in a family, Jagan is funding one child in a family to kind of encourage school going and then to discourage the dropouts. Now Chandrababu says that whatever the number could be in the family, school going children, I am going to implement it. So that is again and there are lot of schemes. So one rough estimate now they are making is that if you have to fulfill Chandrababu promises, definitely you may be requiring some 75,000 to 1 lakh crore. So where he will get that money? But he will make the promise. That's the problem.
See, the interesting thing is, irrespective of which political party it is, right? They all say the same thing in the end. I am going to make your life better. నీ జీవితం నేను బాగు చేస్తాను, నీ 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 పిల్లలకి నేను చదువులు చెప్పిస్తాను, లేదా నీకు హాస్పిటల్ సంగతి నేను చూసుకుంటాను, అనారోగ్యం వస్తే నేను చూసుకుంటాను నిన్ను, ఏం పర్లేదు, అందరూ అదే చెప్తారు. ఎవ్రీబడి సేస్ ద సేమ్ థింగ్. ఇట్స్ జస్ట్ ద వే దే సే ఇట్. నా భాషలో నేను చెప్తాను, ఈయన భాషలో ఈయన చెప్తాడు, ఈయన పదజాలం ఆయన వాడతాడు, ఎవరి భాషలో వాళ్ళు చెప్తారు, ఎవరు ఎలా చెప్పగలిగితే అలా చెప్తారు. ఒక పార్టీ చెప్పింది, రెండో పార్టీ దానికి రెండింతలు చేసి చెప్తుంది. Twice is what it is, exactly like what Vamsi was saying, Jagan says, I'll give you some 3,000 rupees for something. Chandrababu Naidu says, I will double it, or I'll add 1,000 more.
4,500 something he was
it's 4,000. Right. 20 లక్షల ఉద్యోగాలు ఇస్తానంటాడు ఆయన. తెలుగుదేశం ఎన్ని లక్షలు వస్తాయి అసలు? యాక్చువల్లీ హౌ మెనీ ఆఫ్ దోస్ ల్యాక్స్ విల్ మెటీరియలైజ్? ఐ మీన్ ఇట్స్ నాట్ గివింగ్ జాబ్స్, ఇట్స్ నాట్ ఫిల్లింగ్ వేకెన్సీస్, ఇట్ ఈస్ creating jobs. That's an entirely different ball game. It's a phenomenal challenge, creating. And at the same time, he says, I'll give unemployment allowance. If I'm in a rural area, 3,000 rupees of unemployment allowance will take care of me. I don't have to search for employment. Honestly, 3,000 రూపాయలు నాకు నెలకిస్తే నేనేం పని చేయక్కర్లా, చిన్న ఊర్లో బ్రహ్మాండంగా బతికేయచ్చు. That's the kind of a problem we have. You see, this populism is what is taking a toll. And
there is this deterioration also. Earlier, this NREGS is there, Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, where you work and then you earn. Now, without doing anything also, I am giving money. And the age limit for old age pensions, it was earlier some 60 years, which makes some sense, and now it is I think 45 also. I mean 45 is still a very productive age. I can say that. Why should you feed them, making them sit at home, and then that is the kind of a bad culture also. It is
doesn't make sense, actually it doesn't really make sense. But if somebody is giving me money for free for doing nothing, then I'll take it. Whether you can actually give it to me today, ఇవాళ ఇస్తావా, రేపు ఇస్తావా, ఎల్లుండి ఇస్తావా నాకు తెలియదు, కానీ ఇస్తావు నువ్వు మొత్తానికి. నాకు ఏదో టైంలో ఇస్తానని చెప్పావు కాబట్టి నాకు ఇస్తావు. ఆ ఆస్తి నేను నీకు ఓటేస్తాను. సో ఇట్స్ it's a dangerous, it's a slippery slope. There is no going back from it unless somebody stands up, somebody comes and says, no, this is not what's going to work, and we cannot continue like this.
So since we have been following and you guys have been covering the elections for multiple elections, so now since we have talked about political parties, we have talked about why they make those promises, and how difficult it is to fulfill these promises. So is there not so how have things changed, according to you, from a voter's perspective, that okay, these were the fancy promises, I want easy money, everybody loves easy money, and therefore I will vote for you. But after 5 years or another 4 years, when I see some of those promises not being fulfilled, so does it really affect my decision making, and therefore it should scare the political parties into making those promises that okay, I'll get one term but maybe not the next term, because the promises are not fulfilled. So then possibly it may act as a kind of a check or balance that okay, I'll make a promise, but I'll make a promise which is realistic, right? Rather than just making an offer which they can't refuse. So how are the things from a voter's perspective, especially the Telugu speaking states, because we are sitting there?
See, ప్రజలు కూడా మేనిఫెస్టో దగ్గరికి వచ్చేటప్పటికి they are analyzing it. It's not that they are very blind to this. Suppose మనకి 2014లో చంద్రబాబు ఏం ప్రామిస్ చేశారు, ఎంతవరకు ఫుల్ఫిల్ చేశారు, ఇప్పుడు 19లో ఏం చేస్తున్నారు, జగన్ 19 నుంచి 24 దాకా ఎంతవరకు ఫుల్ఫిల్ చేశారు, and now what is it they are promising. If you take a closer look at what Jagan has released, really he did not this manifesto is almost like similar to his 2019 manifesto, except in one or two places he increased the amount of benefit which he is going to pass on. That is also very minimal increase, I would say. But if you look at Chandrababu's manifesto, which he has actually said that this is not it is only a first phase of manifesto. Now I think ఇవాళ మళ్ళీ తెలుగుదేశం, జనసేన అండ్ బీజేపీ అలయన్స్ కింద పోటీ చేస్తున్నారు ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్లో. I think now they are also releasing one more manifesto. So initially he talked about only some Super 6 kind of a thing, where he promised this free bus travel to women, which the Telangana Congress government has promised and now implementing. And also I think free power to up to 200 units, something like that. Broadly some 6 areas they have promised. Now
cooking gas cylinders
and all. Now he is going to come up with the detailed another round of manifesto, where I think he is going to announce this increase in the Amavadi whatever the assistance given to the school going children. And also couple of, I think people are expecting that he also may announce loan waiver for farmers, which the deliberately the Jagan government in 2014 they have not promised, 19 they have not promised, and now also they have not promised certain things. But if you look at in the contemporary politics in our country, మేనిఫెస్టోని ఒక శాంక్టిటీతో ఉన్న ఒక డాక్యుమెంట్లా ట్రీట్ చేస్తే కనుక దాన్ని మనం మేనిఫెస్టో ఇచ్చినందుకు మనం ఫుల్ఫిల్ చేయాలి అన్న ఒక స్ట్రాంగ్ రిజాల్వ్ ఉన్నదైతే మటుకు ఐ కెన్ సే డెఫినెట్లీ వైఎస్ఆర్ కాంగ్రెస్. మోస్ట్ ఆఫ్ హిస్ ప్రామిసెస్ హీ ట్రై టు డెలివర్, అండ్ కపుల్ ఆఫ్ థింగ్స్ హీ మైట్ హ్యావ్ మిస్డ్ ఇట్, బట్ బై అండ్ లార్జ్ ఇఫ్ యూ సీ దట్ ఇన్ఫ్యాక్ట్ అది కొంత కౌంటర్ ప్రొడక్టివ్ కూడా అయింది అతనికి. Too much of focus on these welfare schemes because he promised in the manifesto. Now he is facing a criticism that rest of the areas he neglected it. Of course, they have their own argument, saying that మొత్తం ఈ ఫండింగ్ అంతా కూడా primarily it is going into 3 sectors. One is education, తర్వాత యూనివర్సల్ హెల్త్ కవరేజ్ అండర్ ఆరోగ్యశ్రీ, దట్ రాజీవ్ వైఎస్ఆర్ ఆరోగ్యశ్రీ స్కీమ్ కింద ఐ థింక్ అరౌండ్ సమ్ 3,000 odd డిసీజెస్ ని అందులో ఇంక్లూడ్ చేస్తారు. సో కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ఎ క్యాష్లెస్ ట్రీట్మెంట్. యూ గో టు ది దిస్ వన్ వాట్ యూ కాల్ హాస్పిటల్, and then మీకు ట్రీట్ అవుతారు, దెన్ యూ కెన్ కమ్ వితౌట్ పేయింగ్ ఆల్సో. And because most of the like 80% of people are covered under these welfare schemes, because the white ration card is the basis. A white ration card means almost 80% families kontunnayi. So health is no doubt, even
so can you explain, sir, what is this white ration card?
White ration card is below poverty line, basically below poverty line. That means the center has fixed certain guidelines to identify poor, like annual income ఇంత తక్కువ ఉండాలి, దీస్ కొన్ని ఉండకూడదు వాళ్ళకి. సో బట్ వీళ్ళు ఏం చేశారంటే ఇంకా రిలాక్స్ చేసి అదే క్రైటీరియా తీసుకుంటే సమ్ 60% ఎంతో వస్తారు. వీళ్ళు ఇంకా దాన్ని రిలాక్స్ చేసి దే బ్రాట్ మోర్ అండ్ మోర్ పీపుల్ ఇన్ టు ద బీపీఎల్ డెఫినిషన్. సో ఆల్మోస్ట్ 80%కి వస్తుంది. సి ఎడ్యుకేషన్ ఆల్సో, ఎడ్యుకేషన్ అండ్ హెల్త్, ఇఫ్ యూ లుక్ ఎట్ వెస్ట్రన్ కంట్రీస్ ఆల్సో, వాళ్ళు కూడా దీని మీద ఎక్కువ ఫోకస్ చేస్తారు, ఫ్రీ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ అండ్ ఫ్రీ హెల్త్ కేర్. బట్ ద వే యూ ఇంప్లిమెంట్ ఆల్సో డిపెండ్స్. ఇప్పుడు మనకి స్కూల్కి పంపించినందుకు 15,000 రూపాయలు సంవత్సరానికి వాళ్ళకి ఇచ్చేసి వాళ్ళు యూ ఇన్వెస్ట్ మోర్ ఇన్ డెవలపింగ్ ఇన్ఫ్రాస్ట్రక్చర్, బెటర్ ఎక్విప్మెంట్ ఆర్ సమ్ మోడర్న్ ఎక్విప్మెంట్. సో ఆ బ్యాలెన్స్ చేయగలిగితే బాగుండేది. అండ్ విమెన్ ఎంపవర్మెంట్ ఈస్ ద థర్డ్ వన్. లైక్ ఈ సెల్ఫ్ హెల్ప్ గ్రూప్స్ ఉంటాయి మనకి, ఐ థింక్ కంట్రీ వైడ్ నౌ ఇట్ ఈస్ అ ఫినామినా. సెల్ఫ్ హెల్ప్ గ్రూప్స్కి ఇచ్చి ఇంతకుముందు వాళ్ళు లోన్ తీసుకుని వాళ్ళు కనుక టైమ్లీ రీపే చేసేస్తే 0 ఇంట్రెస్ట్, గవర్నమెంట్ విల్ బేర్ ద ఇంట్రెస్ట్ అనమాట. అండ్ ప్రీవియస్ గవర్నమెంట్ ప్రామిస్ చేసినట్లుగా లోన్ వాళ్ళు తీసుకున్న దే సెడ్ దే విల్ వేవ్ ఆఫ్ ద లోన్స్, బట్ ది ప్రీవియస్ గవర్నమెంట్ డిడ్ నాట్ డూ ఇట్. వీళ్ళు వచ్చిన తర్వాత ఆల్మోస్ట్ ఐ థింక్ 3 installments దే హ్యావ్ క్లియర్డ్, 1 more installment ఈస్ పెండింగ్. సో యాజ్ ఐ సెడ్, మోస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద థింగ్స్ we should give credit to YSR government for fulfilling the promises, but at the same time now his biggest challenge also, electoral, one simple electoral issue today is in Andhra politics is that people మిగతా అన్ని విషయాలు వదిలేస్తా ఉన్నారు. నౌ జగన్ని మళ్ళీ మనం ఎలెక్ట్ చేసుకుని ఈ స్కీమ్స్ కంటిన్యూ చేయాలా, లేదా ఈ స్కీమ్స్ ఇలాగే కంటిన్యూ చేసుకుంటూ పోతే స్టేట్ మిగతా డెవలప్మెంట్ అంతా ఎఫెక్ట్ అవుతుంది, ఇక వేరే ఏ డెవలప్మెంట్ ఉండదు, జాబ్స్ ఉండవు, కాబట్టి ఈసారి జగన్ని మార్చేసి వేరే వాళ్ళని ఎలెక్ట్ చేసుకోవాలా. ఆ వేరే వాళ్ళు చేసి ప్రామిసులు కానీ వేరే వాళ్ళు ఇస్తామన్నటువంటివి ఇంకా కాస్ట్ అవుతాయని కానీ అవేమి కూడా చూడట్లా. ఇప్పుడు పబ్లిక్ టూ మచ్ ఆఫ్ జగన్ సెంట్రిక్ అయిపోయి, సో ఇతను ఉండాలా ఇతను ఉండకూడదా అన్న దగ్గరికి వచ్చింది.
Yeah, I think he said it all.
Even in Telangana also, I think maybe you can throw some light on Telangana. We have elections in December, last December.
Right.
So how this manifesto, definitely it helped Congress, some of the schemes which they announced.
Yes. Telangana, definitely. The manifestos, the Congress manifesto played a very important role, just because, number one, people were very tired of the BRS government. They were very tired because of the level of corruption that pervaded the entire system. It became systemic and it was being condoned. The first term of KCR as the Chief Minister was a little better. The second term, it just went haywire. Everybody who could make money was making. The perception was with the top guns of the party, the top guns in the government were making money. So why shouldn't a clerk make some money? You know, it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. And then there were promises like Dalit Bandhu or 3 acres land or 2-bedroom houses. They built a few tens of thousands of houses which are just lying vacant. They never got around to distributing them either. That's because the political process, the local political leaders came into play. Technically, the district collector was supposed to pick the beneficiaries from a whole lot of applicants, but that didn't happen. There were a lot of these problems, and people definitely did want a change. People wanted something different. People got tired of BRS, and the manifestos played a great role. You know,
Yeah, it helped Congress.
it helped Congress, and people bought into it. And to their credit, irrespective of what BRS says or what BJP says, Congress has implemented a few of those things. May not be in toto in terms of its 6 guarantees and things like that. If you don't nitpick, opposition parties will always nitpick. But if you don't nitpick, they have started doing something. And any government that comes in, minimum needs 6 months to 8 months just to settle down, figure things out. And if you're coming into a secretariat that is bankrupt, practically, it takes longer.
Right.
And the fact that this new government here is now able to pay salaries on the first of every month, pensions on the first of every month, is a great achievement.
Lokappudu government employment and why people use it to be very kind of craze for government employment is that the first thing is that he will get salary on the first of the month.
Right. See,
Today, if these the governments, they are claiming credit actually that they could clear the salary bill in the first 2 weeks, first 10 days or 15 days. డబ్బులు క్యాష్ ఫ్లోస్ ఉన్నాయి తగ్గిపోతుంది.
సిచ్యువేషన్ ఎంతవరకు వెళ్ళిందంటే తెలంగాణలో ఒకసారి బీఆర్ఎస్ వర్కింగ్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ ఫార్మర్ మినిస్టర్ కేటీ రామారావు సైడ్ ఎక్కడ రాస్తుంది, వేర్ ఇస్ ఇట్ రిటర్న్ దట్ సాలరీ షుడ్ బి పేడ్ ఫస్ట్. The same thing can be turned around and said, okay, fine, where is it written? It's a manifesto, it's just an intent. A manifesto is just an intent of what we want to do. It is not even a promise. They may say, we promise, we will do this, we will promise, we will do that, but it is an intent of what they want to do. And like I said, everybody says the same thing. I will make your life better. Nee jeevitam brahmandanga chestanu chustu untunnadu.
So basically we can conclude one thing from whatever we have discussed so far is that manifestos are important. Electorate definitely goes through them.
Yes.
It is just that we may not later on hold them accountable, or we may not have the financial sharpness to really ask the questions, okay, how are you going to fund this? The government has said something, it's like a pool, from which you can draw as much water as you can, and nobody is going to question where the water is coming from.
Yeah, I'll stop you there just for a second. When you talked about where is the government funding it from, if there is going to be a reform of any kind, what I think is, if there is going to be a reform that can be implemented and that can be enforced, it should be one where parties mandatorily have to say, where are we going to get this money for this from? Otherwise, we are talking about, nobody is saying don't give the poorest of the poor, బీద వాళ్ళకి జీవితం బాగు చేయడానికి మీరేమీ చేయొద్దు అని ఎవరు అనరు.
Needy should get.
The needy should definitely get what they need.
Only the needy should get.
Exactly. That's the key. Only the needy should get. ఎవరికైతే అత్యంత అవసరం ఉంటుందో వారికి రావాలి, కానీ ప్రతి వాళ్ళకి ఇచ్చేసి నాకు ఇంకో 1,00,000 మందిని యాడ్ చేసుకుంటే నేను బీపీఎల్లో వాళ్ళ ఓట్లు కూడా నాకు వస్తాయి కదా. 5 year cycle కంటే the politicians have to, the parties have to elevate themselves in terms of short term and the long term perspective. Of course, the flip side is, నేను పవర్లో లేకపోతే నేనేం చేయలేను కదా. Unless I'm in power, I can't do anything. So if I have to be in power, I have to do this. There are two sides to the coin. It's a complicated issue.
Last one decade has actually turned worse. ఎందుకంటే ఇంతకుముందు ఒక బ్యాలెన్స్ ఉండేది అట్లీస్ట్, లైక్ ఈవెన్ తెలుగు స్టేట్స్ ఆల్సో కంబైన్డ్ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్, ఇఫ్ యూ లుక్ ఎట్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ ఫోకస్ ఆన్ ఇన్ఫ్రాస్ట్రక్చర్ డెవలప్మెంట్, లైక్ ఇరిగేషన్ ప్రాజెక్ట్స్ కానీ, పోర్ట్స్ కానీ, రోడ్స్ కానీ, ఆ బ్యాలెన్స్ ఉండేది. బట్ నౌ ఇంక్రీజింగ్లీ they're all the parties, they feel that they can come to power only if you promise more and more and more freebies.
So is there a hope that since now politicians have started making presentations, at least if we look at the government in center and the states, the ministers have to make presentations at what they have done, to the party president or those kind of things. So somewhere even these practices would gradually come in, because your electorate is also changing, right? They are people who are working in startups, they're young, they're educated, somewhere they also understand a little bit of it. So there could be a scenario where you make presentations, then you also say, okay, this is my welfare plan. I'll not use the word business plan, but this is my welfare plan. So this is how it gets funded, this is where there are no leaks, and this is whom it is going to.
So unfortunately, voter is also not bothered where he gets funded. As long as I am getting my money let them get from wherever they want.
So now this brings me to the next question. Since Balu, you have seen some other political systems also, you have been a part of them. How is it there? Is it similar, or because they are developed economies or matured countries, it's slightly different?
It definitely is different in that sense that you don't really get to hear much about the freebies. It's more on policies. They're more on broader layout, broader perspective. So this kind of specific promises don't happen. Take US for instance. It's on policy. What's going to be my international policy? What's going to be my defense policy? What's going to be my immigration policy? What's going to be my environmental policy? The rest of the world can say whatever it wants to say about the advanced Western world, so to speak, that they are the worst polluters, they are the worst thing. At least they talk about it in a very, very serious manner, issues like environment or international policy. So it's very different. And there is a rigorous debate on that because ఒకళ్ళతో ఒకళ్ళు డిబేట్ పెట్టుకుంటారు కదా. ఇక్కడ లేదు మనకు ఆ సిస్టమ్. మీరు ఉన్నారనుకోండి, యు ఆర్ ద ప్రెసిడెన్షియల్ క్యాండిడేట్, ఐఎమ్ ద ప్రెసిడెన్షియల్ క్యాండిడేట్, యు ఆర్ ద ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ క్యాండిడేట్, ఐఎమ్ ద ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ క్యాండిడేట్, హీఈస్ వన్ ఆఫ్ దెమ్. We stand there and discuss. We don't have that system. What we do here is challenges. I'll throw a challenge at you, you throw a challenge at me, he throws a challenge at me. Let's say I tell Vamsi saying that if you want, I'm throwing you a challenge. If you cannot do this in the next 100 days, you should resign, right? Vamsi will say, I accept. Let's assume Vamsi says he'll accept, but he's actually not going to, he doesn't accept exactly what I am saying. He'll accept something else. It's like A fighting B, B fighting C, and A and B will never fight. And B will fight with D and C will fight with A. They always talk beyond, they talk past the actual problems. If you notice any political debate or any political discussion here, we are always talking past each other. You say something, I will sound like I am responding to you, but I am actually talking something else. And people are not fools, believe me. Whatever we may say, whatever the political parties may believe that I can actually twist people into believing what I say, people are not fools. They know exactly what is happening. We have seen that. Time and again we have seen it in this country or elsewhere in the world. So I think, I'll stop there.
Thanks a lot. This was really a very insightful discussion, and I hope the audience will also, enjoy this and look at things from a different perspective. And as you rightly pointed out, that collective wisdom of a public or a nation always is sharp enough than few politicians or political parties to really.
Yeah, that's the choice. I mean, I always say that, feel that, and say that choosing a lesser evil of the day.
Yeah.
Democracy is all, what all it means.
Yeah, because if we look at India shining in the 70s when Mrs. Gandhi lost election, so people know what is good for them and they know when to stop pampering the politicians and say, okay, this is wrong and this is right.
Yeah, they will definitely. They a lot of correctional mechanisms they do it. If you look at, there were frequent elections in mid-90s, after 96, 98, 99. Then people said, look, this is the way we are going to give you mandate. Whether you form alliances and run the government for 5 years or you come back with another round of election, we don't mind. Now then the parties have realized the necessity of having coalition governments and then running them successfully for 5 years. See, otherwise the cost of election, every 1 year or 2 years, if it is there, then all the political parties, they have come to a kind of an unwritten understanding that look, the coalition governments. Otherwise, in India there was no earlier there was no coalition government. Now it has become a routine, kind of a norm.